Okay, today we have Mr. Fritz Arrowsmith, who started the Solon Economist, or brought it back to life anyway, in 1948 with his wife Marjorie. Mr. Arrowsmith is going to tell us the steps that they had to go through back in those days to put out a weekly newspaper.
Okay. Well, to start with, when we first started, it took 3 days of about 12 hours a day, at least, to get the paper out, but it gradually got it down to a process where it didn't take so long. But anyway, we started by on Monday. One of us would go to Cedar Rapids in our Iowa City to sell advertising, as the town was too small and too few businesses to support a newspaper. And the other one would work in the shop. If I went to sell the advertising, my wife would write stories or set a little type on the typewriter, on the linotype. Otherwise, if she went out, I usually worked on the linotype. And on Tuesday, it was writing and setting type for the paper, and setting what we call ad cuts, which would be set on the linotype lines for the advertising, and making casts of some of them. Those were all stored, and the ads were all set. Then on Wednesday, we finished setting the type, and that was when all the type was set and the ads were all composed. Started putting them in forms, which were about 6 columns wide, about the size of the page most daily newspapers when we started. And we put the ads in and then filled it up with type about stories about the town.
What would you write about?
Well, most of the stories were, people often ask that question, what would you put in a newspaper in a small town like that? What it amounted to was births, deaths, marriages, and a few little other things that went on.
High school sports? High
school sports. And in the town where we were had an independent baseball in the summertime. And anything like that, it was mostly recording the things that had happened. We never had any big stories. My wife wrote a column, which was pretty popular, and she became pretty well known around the area, and was quoted quite often. When she started out, she said it wasn't going to be about family and it wasn't going to be editorials. So it was just a chat column, really. But
local gossip a little bit?
Yeah, and she was pretty successful. She was on a couple newspaper panels with some daily reporters. But anyway, the only time she wrote an editorial was in our next newspaper. And by coincidence, the school boards in the 2 towns decided the same week to cut out girls' basketball. So she wrote a column about how the girls had nothing to do in school, so they probably would have to take up knitting. But as it turned out, it was a pretty successful editorial, because one town the school board got so many calls, they decided to keep the girls' basketball team. In the other town, the president of the school board didn't care how many people wanted it, he just canceled it.
So she saved basketball for, which town was that?
For Durant.
This was back in the days when most states didn't have women's basketball like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. They were playing 2-court basketball, and Durant was one of the first girls teams to play five-girl.
We're veering off the topic a little bit, although this is fascinating information. What we're going to do now is stop, and then we're going to go back to getting back to the newspaper. But we're all going to look forward also to hearing some more about the mores and what was going on in these little towns back in those days. Okay? So we're going to cut this, and then we're going to come right back to you and ask you to get back to more about the process of putting the paper out.